Hello, friends, fellow film chewers. Welcome back to Film Chewing, and welcome back to the Oscars Project, where we are discussing every Best Picture winner from 1960 to current day. And this week we are on the 1988 film Rain Man. It's a film that on the surface looks like a story about autism and savant abilities, but the deeper question might be whether it's really about a man learning empathy for the first time in his life. And we had just talked about, I remember this movie very differently when I watched it back in probably the late 80s, early 90s. So it's interesting to reframe them later in life. So I have a question to start the podcast up with. Like I like to surprise everyone. My question with this one is, can love exist in a relationship where one person holds almost all the power? And Jared and Chris are here this week. I'm getting used to the look that they give me when I help them with these questions.
Oh man. Well, this film hit me personally. And so the answer to your question is yes, it can. Because I'm on one side of that type of relationship, and so it definitely can. And I think as we watched through the film and see the transformation of was it Charlie? Is that Cruz's
Charlie
character?
Babbitt.
Yeah, Charlie Babbitt. Yeah. And see the transformation of Charlie as I kind of wish that it was a transformation we saw through maybe a different actor. Because it's so easy to get tired of hearing Tom Cruise yell for 2 hours. But it's more importantly, I think the script was okay. I think the script was good. And I think that Charlie's transformation was something important that needed to be said. It's an important statement that to, like you said, Steve, awaken empathy in a person, and so yes is the answer to the question, but what form that love takes and how it's portrayed and stuff like that there's a lot of subtlety and nuance there that can be explored.
Yeah, I would say yes as well. Not necessarily in the context of this film, but I think people are looking at different things out of relationships and love. So some people are very happy that one person holds all the power. In fact, that's what they're attracted to in some ways. But I think it does kind of speak to, and linking it back to this film again, the kind of circumstances in which they get brought up, because an awful lot of Charlie as the character is wound up in the fact that he has no relationship with his father. So his lack of empathy and anger kind of stems from that as well. And a lot of relationships that are of that form kind of stem from some sort of past trauma or past issues that they need to deal with. And I do like your point about actually the Tom Cruise-ness of the performance, because when I watched this probably late 80s, early 90s, Tom Cruise wasn't as pervasive or maybe in his final form then. So my aptitude to see his shtick and kind of embrace it was probably very different then, whereas watching it now, where he's basically done the same performance for 40 years, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, but also I think he's pretty good in this. In fact, surprisingly, it was Hoffman's performance I had a little bit of a problem with actually in this, and I think a lot of that comes from differences in understanding of the kind of condition that he's trying to portray. For one way or another, I found it very affected, maybe too affected in some ways, and Hoffman's a good actor, but then he could only work with what was known at the time and the kind of access people that he had in this other thing. And I think the bigger question from this is, like, savantness isn't necessarily autism, but this film became the yardstick by where autism was judged in people for like 30 years, maybe even still to this day. This kind of superpower myth that
Mhm.
nearly exists, and ultimately has led to a misunderstanding of autism as a condition and a way of life, and I found
Absolutely.
a lot of this very difficult to watch, actually, for long parts of it. It's sort of first half of the movie very, very difficult. The second half, when it became more about Charlie Babbitt, it was actually very nice. In fact, just that one scene, which I'm sure we'll get to, where they're talking and they discover the origins of the Rain Man phrase, I actually thought was very touching and very effective at that stage, because there was a connection at that stage that kind of pervaded both of their lives, and the crossover of their previous past, so that was very beautiful. But I struggled a lot with this, watching this movie, like a lot.
Yeah. I forgot to mention the runners up that year were The Accidental Tourist, Dangerous Liaisons, Mississippi Burning, and Working
Mhm.
Girl runners up. Yeah, I remember this being more of a, maybe it was I know it's interesting watching these movies later in life, but the story felt a little shallow, like there wasn't a whole lot. And I think the transformation for Charlie comes with the Las Vegas trip, where he
Mhm.
basically just takes advantage of Raymond, and that's kind of his turning point. And it's when in the last third maybe of the movie, and that kind of opens him up to the possibility of loving Raymond and seeing him as
Yeah.
a having value and not just a way to help himself with the inheritance. But for that to be the turning point of his perception of Raymond, of his appreciation for Raymond, felt kind of gross. It felt kind of, you know, like it wasn't like they were a team. It was like he was taking advantage because Raymond didn't know. Like he was just there doing his thing. He didn't understand what was happening, and Charlie took advantage of him for his own benefit. So I guess you can. I see it both. I mean, I know it's not. I don't want to, you know, make too big of a deal about it, but it seemed a little strange that that's the turning point for his character. That moment.
Hmm. Yeah. I don't know. I think it kind of ties into his character, because his situation, because one of the problems I have with a movie like this is the the fact that it's well off or rich people dealing with these problems, because Charlie's father was rich, or at least well off, the and so there wasn't a problem with the upkeep and care of
Mhm.
Raymond. He was put in a probably for what back then was a fairly decent home, um, for for taking care of him. And Charlie wasn't um in any way. I mean, he got financial trouble on his own. That was his own situation, his own doing. And he was cut off from his inheritance, but he also had the privilege of growing up with a lot of financial backup and stuff like that. And so, he does have the scars of really not having a good relationship with his father. Um, and that is the evidence of, the evidence of the script, and in his in his inability to connect, not just with Raymond at first, but just people in general. And the it's always a different situation when it seems that people who are well off and rich uh, lose their connection easier than people who are not. And so you don't get the story of people struggling to get by, in addition with the problems of an autistic person on top of that. And so it doesn't ring as true to, I think, most of the population who has to deal with these kind of things
Mhm.
on that level. Uh, and I think that you mentioned Dustin Hoffman's performance. I think it was really good for what he had to work with, because unfortunately the script tends to pander to those moments where all of a sudden, he has these little breakthroughs, these little breakthroughs of understanding, these little where and autistic people don't work like that. They just don't, they don't have those aha moments conveniently to move a story along. And so, that was definitely for the convenience of the story and the convenience of the script, when Hoffman had to have those moments of sudden understanding, or the little secret conversations with Charlie's character that he didn't have with anybody else and stuff like that. That was convenience for the script. And so that was the problems that I had with the story in general. I think if Hoffman, if the script was suited towards people who were more regular and everyday, then and towards the actual problems of autism, rather than the problems of Charlie being able to empathize with his brother, I think it would have been a different kind of performance from Hoffman. I think he just performed the way he was supposed to for the script.
Yeah. That's a great point. And actually, it kind of speaks to me again about what I think, Steve, you touched on this earlier on, what I think the film is about, watching it now versus what I thought it was about then, if you know what I mean. I thought it was about the portrayal of caring for somebody with, say, an autistic or savant condition or otherwise, whereas really it's just about his growth and growth and empathy at that stage, and really I've seen some criticism of the film, which I think is very justified. Raymond didn't have to be autistic, didn't have to be a savant. He was basically just a stooge to contrast his emotional growth. It actually, his condition and the things that affected him day to day were sort of irrelevant to the story in some ways, because it was just about sort of doing that kind of light to shine against Charlie Babbitt. And you can even look at Charlie Babbitt's relationship with his girlfriend to say that, it was not really anything to do with, like, say, his brother being a savant or otherwise. It was just who he was as a person. Like, Charlie Babbitt doesn't really judge him at any stage. Like, the first sign of difficulty, he agrees and empathizes with them at a certain point. Like, when they try and get on the plane, there's not much of a confrontation about the plane. He just says, right, we're getting the car and we're going to do it that way. He coalesces very quickly to the needs of Raymond in ways that he doesn't with his girlfriend. And even, again, I remember having very strong feelings of the girlfriend being a good character. But again, the scene in the elevator, I think, is ill-conceived as well. Yeah, it's contrived, isn't it? And it's almost like a justification or a look how good we're being here or something like that. I mean, it's just not. I don't like that scene anymore, and I think it probably did when I first seen it. Do you know what I mean? I like that sort of reaching out and that kind of idea of human connection, which would be a sort of like more neurotypical kind of connection with somebody, for the audience. But as you say, Jared, the script kind of puts that in front of all of these characters and kind of is what it is at that time. And I think the script has aged poorly. It's not a bad film by any measure. It just is very. The lens which we view it now is very different than the one as before, especially because so many of us have real experiences of that, which we didn't probably have when we were much younger people and in the time and the phrase that it was, the kind of understanding that we had. So we have real experiences that kind of shine a light on the relationships with this film. And yeah, and like you say, Steve, the turning point of Vegas. I mean, Vegas is this dirty kind of seedy city, and otherwise, like, they had that scene with the prostitute as well, and that he just wanted to dance, and again, there's that opportunism kind of aspect of that. It just felt a bit icky, and really, I suppose the the central heart of the movie, I think, is that scene where he's running the bath. And I think if they had built on that more rather than the set piece of Las Vegas and the accumulation of wealth and all of that kind of stuff, I think they'd have been much better off. Because I still think the same. I think I thought the same thing beforehand. I think Dr. Brunner, I still think he is much more like Charlie than, because he's doing it for his own personal gain. I don't think he has a great invested interest in Raymond either. I don't think anybody comes off well in that scenario, in that debate, especially like the third person, the other doctor, where Charlie basically has a go at him for trying to humiliate Raymond to make a point. I think that's quite a powerful line and scene in it. They're just coupled within the movie, but yeah, it's an odd movie for the way that it tries to tell the story and the points that it tries to make.
I remember it being more of a heartfelt story, but I think rewatching it now, Charlie seems. I'm not convinced Charlie really changed at the end of the movie. I'm not convinced he's going to visit. He's going to even be in touch with Raymond. It seems like Raymond is just a device to explain Charlie's growth. Like the road trip they take is this slow process of Charlie changing and being able to have empathy. But I'm not convinced that he's a different person. The movie is ultimately, story-wise at least, I think everyone remembers Hoffman's performance. That's kind of what most people walk away with is his performance and his character. But the story is really about Charlie and his transformation. But it focuses a lot on Charlie and not so much. Raymond just seems kind of like an afterthought in this story, which kind of, I don't know. I have mixed feelings about this. I remember looking forward to watching this and thinking it's a classic movie. And now after rewatching it, it's not nearly as good as I remember it being. It's kind of it wasn't like it wasn't like a Patton or some other films we watched, but it wasn't as good as I remember it being. And the character, like Tom Cruise is very Tom Cruise at this point in his career. That was very much, he was very kind of, I think it changed with Born on 4th of July, which was nominated in 1988. And then that may have been the turning point for him. And he's gone on to do some different types of roles. But at this point in the mid 80s, this is kind of his character. So I don't know. I'm a little torn on this one. I'm not sure how I feel about it.
Well, there were some high points to the film as well, and the I mean, it did at least bring awareness to some of these problems, to the public and stuff like that. But I think that one of the underlying things is that I think that Charlie's character was in his own way autistic because of his relationship with his father. It kind of messed him up, and the way he was always working through problems by yelling through them, and that was how he worked through things. And I think that was really very well portrayed by when he was in the phone booth with Raymond, and he's yelling on the phone. If you look at it from that scene from Raymond's perspective, his brother, Charlie, is constantly just picking up things and yelling at them. And whereas that is no different than Raymond, sorting his stuff and doing and using the things, using his notebook and watching the TV. That is absolutely no different. So Charlie was the exact same person in that moment when he's yelling on the phone in the phone booth, and when he's yelling on the phone when they're at that lady's house, and when he's yelling on the phone in the hotel. It's the same exact type of situation. If you really examine what Charlie's doing in those moments, the words mean absolutely nothing. And they generally mean nothing throughout the whole film because he's not getting anywhere with all these words that he's yelling. And it's the same thing that Raymond's doing. He's not getting anywhere when he's watching his Wheel of Time or whatever it was he was watching, and doing all the stuff in the notebook. And it's it really is like a mirror held up to each character, and a reflection of each other.
I like, that we're book nerds when you say Wheel of Time instead of Wheel of Fortune.
Yeah.
Oops. You're right.
That would have been a really interesting twist on the story as well. That would have been great.
Little slip. Yeah, Wheel of Fortune.
Starting to read off and being fascinated by the different aja and stuff like that. I mean, that would totally fit with the character as well, but yeah.
I did read a lot, so who knows?
That's true. Yeah.
But, the point is the reflection of each other, basically.
Fabulous point. Jared, I hadn't really thought about it, but absolutely, there's no doubt about it. There is a sort of, there is a kind of mirroring of those two relationships and the way that they kind of are struggling to communicate with the world in some ways and impose themselves in the world. Yeah, that's really nice. Yeah, there definitely are a few scenes which definitely do work, and I suspect they're different scenes than I would have thought of at the time. Like the other scene that I really like is the bit where he does let him drive the car through the bit. There's like a freedom and an embracing of that in their relationship, and a trust that has appeared in that relationship. He's not got one hand on the wheel; he's just letting him go ahead and do it, and come up may. And I like that scene as well. But again, it has the feeling of a bit of a aha moment. Look at the growth that it's had, even though kind of Raymond goes along and says, I'm a very good driver for most of the film. Like, I'm a very good driver, I'm pretty good at this as it goes. But again, the fact that he has his girlfriend and the three of them in the car together, and he's just kind of allowed to express himself is a powerful image, I think, but in the scheme of the film, much more powerful than, say, when the two of them walk into the casino in the matching suits, which again, a bit of an iconic image in some ways, that kind of, we are the same, we are brothers, that kind of thing that it kind of says, I think, has lost its relevance maybe a little bit. But also, I can't get away from the fact that Raymond is an incredibly influential film on how society thought and thinks. And so, like, there's almost things that happen in this, like the toothpick scene, etc., that people kind of ascribe to being invented in this movie, or, that kind of stuff that, people will reference it, even outside of people that have even seen this film, I would imagine, which I think's interesting,
Yeah. And it was interesting. They when the film opened, it had this really big, huge smog effect on the scenery, and that kind of like represented how cloudy Charlie's viewpoint was. And then when you look at the final scene of the film, it's all bright and sunny, and it kind of indicated that he has a clearer point of view of what he wants in life and what he's going to do. So it did have nice touches throughout the film here and there. And I think it's a product of its time, like you guys said. I think this would be a completely different movie if made today. And because really that the savant aspect to Raymond is very rare compared to what the actual autistic population is. And so it's just, it really is not reflective of actual society at all.
Yeah. It was actually interesting because I did look up some statistics. 50% of all people that are more than 50% of people that are classed as savant are actually considered autistic. It's about a half and a half. The two things aren't exclusively together,
right?
And have a correlation. So it's and so even within the autistic society, you're talking about less than 1% of all people that are autistic would display those kind of qualities.
Right. Yeah.
So so it's a bit like we were saying earlier on in terms of how it sort of has become the thing to represent autism, but actually is a poor representation of it. Yeah, it doesn't.
Yeah.
Which is interesting.
Yeah, I looked up reasons why the film was won Best Picture, and one of them was it introduced autism to the mainstream. At the time, autism was barely understood by the general public, so it introduced autism to a lot of people who weren't aware of it before, familiar with it. So in that sense, it was important. It was an important film.
Yeah, sure.
At the time. In the style of the movie, the road trip, there's some classic movie tropes in it that's very accessible to most people. It's a family drama. It can be seen as a touching movie where it's a feel good movie, and it fits into, and of course Hoffman's performance is I think what most people remember this movie for. But I just wish the turning point would have happened before Las Vegas. I think that would have been much more impactful if the turning point would have happened at some other point where Charlie wasn't going to benefit from the outcome. And then if they would have been more of a team and had this connection, and then they went to Las Vegas, I think that would have been a completely different kind of, for me anyway, there would have been a different perception. But it is an important movie for the time. It is of the time. I mean, there's a lot of the scenes and a lot of the actor, but it was also a turning point for Tom Cruise in his career. So, and I'm not sure about the girlfriend, what purpose she has in the movie other than to display Charlie's aggressiveness and his kind of grumpiness, or just the way he treats other people. So I guess that's she's there just to display how awful he is to everyone and how emotionally immature and impatient he is. So I guess that's why she's there, but I wish they would have done more with her character instead of just being a punching bag for most of the movie.
No, I agree.
Did was the bathroom scene, the bathtub scene with the water, was that after Vegas?
Before Vegas, I believe, just before Vegas.
It was just before it. Okay.
Oh, I think it's just before Vegas when they're doing that. I could have that wrong, but I think it's just before Vegas because they make the relationship with Raymond, and I think he refers to him as Raymond within Vegas. So.
Oh, okay, right, yeah, okay.
But again, that should have been the break. That should have been the breaking point there, where they really
should have been more of the focus. Yeah. Because that's when Charlie finds out that that was you. That was you. That was the whole origin of that song and stuff like that.
Yeah.
That was pretty good. That was a pretty good scene.
Yeah. There's some classic, like you mentioned, I think Chris, you mentioned the classic scene of them coming down the elevator, the suits on, the scene of them walking out of the hospital, the home that Raymond is in. That's another classic scene. The car, the road trip. It's all-time classic moments in cinema.
Yeah. And another classic beginning to stories like these is it starts with a death in the family, and that death in the family being their father, that indicates death as a catalyst for change. And so that indicates that something's going to change about their lives, and the whole movie reflects on how it gets changed eventually. But that's pretty classic too. That's
and I think it's I was thinking kind of about this as the movie drew to a close. It is pretty much a melodrama, and Oscars don't tend to reward melodramas in the same way by the time they get to the 80s as they did kind of in the 50s, etc. It seemed like a very outdated kind of way, but it's sort of like window dressed as something else, which I think is what gives it its notoriety and its ability to win the Oscar then, because it is small scene places, definitely over the top in some ways. And as you sort of said, I think it was you, Jared, said, we don't get, or maybe Steve, we don't get a sense that he actually did visit him afterwards, very much in the moment, what I mean? So it could be just a very much, at that time, that's how he felt and that's how he represented himself, but it might have been absolutely no change as it went further than the way.
That's a little sad. If we go, the whole movie is about Charlie's transformation, and Raymond ends up in the same position he was before.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I guess we could ask too: should Charlie have gotten custody of him? Should he be able to have taken care of his brother, or was he, or should it be something that professionals care for him?
Yeah, that was another thing that didn't really correlate with me that well, because I know that they the institutions, the bodies that run programs like this for each state kind of push towards the family taking care of their loved ones when it's at all possible. And Raymond didn't seem that bad off in the autistic spectrum that he couldn't be taken care of by his family and Charlie and stuff like that. They made it seem like he was beyond Charlie's care towards the end there. They've kind of made it seem that way. And that was kind of a strong representation given how much Raymond had already been through in the real world and how exposed he got to the real world as Charlie took him through it. And I don't know, because I don't know how this would have worked back in the late 80s, but I know today they would have pushed more towards the family caring for, with outside help, of course, coming in and checking on them, what have you. But of course, back then, and this is where the well-off rich factor comes into play, because who knows what a private institution care would play into that. But so that's I don't know. I'm kind of mixed. I'm really mixed about that whole situation.
Yeah, I sort of feel like the movie does a very good job of showing that he had a place in the real world. You know what I mean? Outside of the institution. If the worst thing that they could portray was that a smoke alarm went off and he was freaked out by it, that happens to neurotypical people as well. Thunder, lightning do that. I mean, that's not that. I think they proved, if anything, that they should have went with Charlie. Now, whether Charlie would have been a good person to look after him, but the kind of life that he was looking to lead is another thing. But I definitely don't see the justification for not doing it, because he literally took him on a road trip in not controlled circumstances. Whereas if he was moving in with his brother or being taken care of his brother, they would have a controlled situation. They would have outside help. That was the worst scenario you could have put the relationship in. And he was never in any physical danger to himself or to other people. He reacted normally to stimuli that autistic people generally do react to, but never to a stage where he actually did hurt himself. There was no hospital visit. There was nothing like that happened. So yeah, I sort of agree, and I do think it was probably if that was a true scenario in the 80s, which obviously it isn't, it's a movie, it spoke more to the power and the representation of big institutions versus solo individuals who it didn't have necessarily the same say. It was like almost like they brought the lawyers in to kind of close ranks and make sure Raymond went back into the institution for the money, which is sad, obviously.
Yeah, that's what it seemed like. I didn't get the motivation behind the lawyers putting him back in there, and the doctor who runs the place, other than they wanted the estate to keep paying for his care in this place, so if I think and like I said, I don't know about the 80s and the rules and all that stuff back then, but I think if today you definitely would have had the courts involved, and a judge would be more geared toward keeping the family unit together. So that is something that the movie doesn't quite capture. It doesn't capture the social aspect of an autistic person. It captures, it brings awareness of autism to the public, but it doesn't accurately portray the all the social workings underlying all that.
Yeah, I guess there is a darker interpretation of the film if when you frame it like that, is everyone used Raymond for their own benefit, whether it was Charlie at the beginning and later he does transform and become different. He does grow. For the institution, do they want Raymond because he is a paying customer, or do they want him because they truly think he needs to be there? And also, did Charlie even need to kidnap his brother? Could he have just taken him out because he's the next of kin, right? So he's a relative. So did he even need to kidnap him, or would he just be okay to say, "Look, this is my brother. I want to take him home and care for myself, and we're gonna discharge him and let's move his stuff to my place and I'll take care of him." I mean, I'm not sure how all that worked then or now, but it seems to. I mean, I know that they were estranged, but they're still brothers. So, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't mind the kidnapping because
Yeah, it creates
it makes it fun, and
yeah.
it shows Charlie's state of mind as well. You know, that I don't think he was thinking clear enough that he could say, "Hey, wait a minute, I can actually legally take him out." You know,
Yeah.
That's funny.
Indeed. And I think probably in that whole conversation, the role of somebody like Vern, because he keeps on referring to him as at the end of the film as his main man, Vern, where's Vern, main man, about how that kind of care is so important to someone like Raymond, you know, outside of, you know, institution, family or otherwise, that kind of steady care and that person not being in the room actually says an awful lot about the conversations that were happening at that stage.
Right.
Yeah. So did Charlie change? Genuinely change? Is it a permanent change or is it a temporary change? What do you guys think?
I think it's open ended, to be honest. Like, I think and maybe on purpose, it's open ended. Of course, I mean, I think it's definitely on purpose. That you know, there's definitely some change as far as how he approaches things, but whether or not it's a true deep character change, I think that's left for us to try to figure out.
Yeah, I don't believe his character changes that much. He becomes more patient, for sure. But I don't think he's ever not attuned to when Raymond needs him. Like that, as soon as the flight and he decides not to do it, like that wasn't a standoff. That was right. I'm just doing this. Like there were aspects that he was empathetic at that stage, at the very start of the movie. Like he just was caught up in himself, and I think if anything has changed is that he realizes there's more to life than his own agenda and money gathering and this kind of maelstrom that he was seeking satisfaction in life out of. You know, maybe he realizes that he can seek satisfaction in the comfort of other people and that kind of stuff. So, you know, having a bit more balance to his life, but also that kind of character is the same kind of person that'll go to the racetrack on the way home. You know, and spend a whole lot of money and get himself in a hole as well. It just seems to be very chaotic, you know, in general.
Yeah, he's never going to stop yelling.
No.
Easy
He
yeller.
doesn't stop it. Yeah. He kicks rocks and you know, it's very frustrated. But another thing, the beginning of the first few minutes were focused on Charlie and his business and the trouble he's in, and that's the main catalyst of why he kidnaps Raymond and why he wants to use him to get money out of the inheritance. But as the film goes on, it kind of tapers off, and we hear a little bit less and less and less about it. But he still has those problems to go to. So, I mean, is he going to approach that problem differently now? Because those problems still exist.
So I think, and I maybe misremember that, but I think the business folded because she comes to the door, doesn't it? The business folded, and he used the winnings from Vegas to pay back his loans or his guarantor of his loans. So I think he's a net zero. I think at that stage. And so he's got this platform to live the rest of his life on. But as you quite rightly say, Steve, he still has the legacy of that kind of lifestyle and the way that he'd done that to deal with. And I don't think there's any evidence that he's going to change and kind of get a 9-to-5 job and that kind of stuff. He's just not that person. He's not working for the man.
I think the fact that the night before the hearing, towards the end, when the doctor from the institution comes and offers him $250,000 to go away, that also kind of points to, I'm going to give you money to go away because it's more profitable for me to pay you this to go away than it is for me to lose
Absolutely.
Raymond.
Yeah.
So that also gives it a more like a, I don't know. It's more of a downer of a ending, I thought.
Yeah. There's sort of no good outcome for Raymond at the end of it. Does anybody really truly care about him? Which is why, at the end of the day, if you were to weigh it up, you'd probably say the brother more than the institution. But at the same stage, neither's great.
No, little sad.
Yeah, definitely.
Maybe I think this is probably viewed differently in '88.
Oh, definitely. Yeah.
I know. I
remember
remember
loving
I
it.
did.
I remember loving this movie, like genuinely loving it for all of its kind of fun scenes, and it's kind of. I remember it being more humorous than what it actually is, and even more touching in a way. It just kind of falls as maybe doesn't ring as true now. Some of the script, the kind of insincerity of some of the script, kind of comes through where I wouldn't have seen that as a much younger man.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I definitely did not remember a lot of things in this movie because, like you said, some of the iconic images that come out of this movie are on the they're on the pastiche comedy side of what you remember from the movie. You know, the uh the matchstick thing um and the suit thing and the winning the money, counting the cards, that whole thing. That's more the glamorous, and when I was watching this as a young man, when you're watching this as a young man, those things stick out more because they're more entertaining and stuff, and you're not looking for the underlying currents of what all that means. And and I find it this movie actually could have taken a way darker turn if it wanted to, because counting cards in Vegas is a big no-no, and so it could have turned out much worse than what it did. But I'm kind of glad they didn't go the whole mob route and stuff like that. But but the whole warning thing was I think enough. But that's the kind of stuff you remember as a young man watching this kind of thing, and you're not really digging too deep into the societal aspects of what it means to have this kind of a diagnosis and what it means to take care of somebody with this kind of thing. They really didn't delve into the care aspect of Raymond, other than surface level stuff.
Mhm. I think it kind of fits in the time because in the mid '80s, mid to late
Yeah.
'80s were more about decadent. I mean, the culture, the music, the movies, a lot of it was decadence and wealth, and that's displayed too in the beginning of the film with the fancy cars, and
Yeah.
they're coming down on the lifts, and Tom Cruise in his fancy clothes, and he's driving a nice car, and it's all about wealth and success and overindulgence. So I think it does fit the time. So it kind of makes sense why the casino played such a big part in that, because at the time that's kind of what was that's what kind of where we were. So
Yeah. That was
it's
glamorous back then.
yeah,
Yeah.
glamour, yeah. And
Uh,
back then I think Vegas was seen very differently than it is now. Vegas was this kind of like Hollywood. I mean, you hear Hollywood and how fancy it is, and oh my god, Hollywood, and you go there and it's like, this place kind of sucks. So it's, but at the time not everyone was able to go there into Vegas, so it had this mysterious,
Yeah.
oh, it's so glamorous, and you go there and it's like, okay, I'm ready to go home in about 3 hours. So
Oh, it takes you that
it's,
long.
yeah, yeah. I have to get off the plane first, but
Oh, yeah.
yeah, but yeah, I think these locations and these these events are seen differently now because they're more accessible to most people than they were in '88 anyway.
Sure.
So.
Definitely. Yeah. It's also worth pointing out that Rain Man was the highest grossing film in the cinema that year.
Oh, wow.
In fact, yeah. So, and actually, as a year of cinema, I was looking up the figures, the box office figures. Like it took in twice as much money as the highest grossing film of the previous year.
Wow.
As did a lot of just in general, everything was much larger. In terms of cinema uptake. So cinema was on a bit of an increase and of the general public kind of going to see things. And there is a sort of, I think there's a common theme, as you sort of say, through an awful lot of the films that are up there, like Big's there, Cocktails there, Twins is there, Crocodile Dundee's there. You know, those kind of films are while not the same, they've got a similar kind of playfulness to them that sort of all ages can go see them to a certain point or get something out of them. A few framed Roger Rabbit, Comedy America. You know, there's a playfulness in all of those films that were out that year. Die Hard as well.
Those are all 88, even
they're all 88, yeah.
From Roger Rabbit. Wow.
Roger Rabbit's 88. It was the second highest grossing film of the year in America. So it's pretty star-studded, you know, kind of year in terms of releases of things that, while not all critically acclaimed, a lot of people will remember from seeing at that time. Like I pretty much remember all of those films very well.
Interesting. Wasn't Batman or Keaton's Batman was about 89, right?
He was 89. I think you're right for Batman. I'll just have a quick check. Yes, it is. It's the second highest gross. We'll talk about it next year because we have an interesting film to talk about for next year. Yeah. But the top 10 list for 1989 is ridiculous.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. And yes, I'm being sarcastic when I say it's going to be fun. It'll be fun to watch. So the 1989 winner Best Picture is Driving Miss Daisy. And it beat Born on 4th of July. It beat Dead Poet Society, Field of Dreams, My Left Foot. I don't know how the hell that happened. But maybe we'll watch it and it'll be a new experience. So
yeah. And I think it's worth pointing out, like 1988 also seen probably the most important film or piece of film or Oscar awarded that would influence the next 20, 30 years of cinema. And that was the short animated feature was Tin Toy by John Lasseter, won that year, which was the first kind of appearance of Pixar in a big form. And you think about, you know, such a short animated film, and you think about why those categories exist, and then you think about where that ends up, you know, where essentially Pixar bought Disney.
Yeah.
Given the way the share distribution, etc., of that went, that's effectively what happened.
Yeah.
So where does this fit in the rankings for the Best Picture winners?
I have it at 21 out of 29.
Wow, I'm having a tough time placing this one. Really tough time. Jeez, it's
a tough one.
It's for me, it's I don't know. I think it's high teens, low 20s.
Okay.
Yeah, that's where I am too. High teens, low 20s. Not the worst, but it's also not.
Yeah.
It's also not. It can't break through that kind of the top two tiers of movies either. So.
Yeah, I definitely like it better than Terms of Endearment, so it's going to be above that.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, interesting. Interesting conversation, definitely, and we try to remember that movies were made at a certain period of time, and it's easy to reframe them in current times. So, but sometimes it's just worth discussing. But you know how things have changed too.
Yeah, it's definitely a conversation generating movie, no doubt about it.
Yeah, for sure.
Absolutely.
Any other points on Rain Man before we wrap up?
Don't know when the next time I'm going to watch it again. That would be one. If somebody said we're going to watch Rain Man, I'll be very indifferent on watching it again, I think. And I think that probably speaks to why I have it at 21. A lot of that plays into ranking. I would probably watch. I have Lawrence of Arabia above it. I'd probably watch Lawrence of Arabia again over Rain Man. I have it
Wow.
above Out of Africa. You know,
Oh, I would.
sort of. Those are the two films that sandwich it. You know.
Yeah. Well, I'm in no rush to watch any of these again because I want to watch Driving Miss Daisy.
Oh yes, absolutely. Yep.
I can't wait.
Oh boy, I can't wait for that discussion.
Oh, I'm gonna
Start with I could have watched Rain Man instead of watching this. What?
Yeah. I mean, I haven't seen Born on 4th of July in a long while, but I remember it
Long
being
time.
really good. So maybe
Yep.
watching it now, maybe I won't enjoy it as much. But even still, even if it's half the movie that I remember it being, it's still better than Driving Miss Daisy. But
Does Tom Cruise yell for 2 hours?
probably,
Probably.
he yells for a good hour in about every
I was
movie.
going to say,
He's either yelling
is
or
Tom
running,
Cruise
one
in
of
the
two.
movie? Yeah. If Tom Cruise in the money is a fairly safe bet that both of those things happen. Yeah.
Guy's still doing his own stunts, still kicking. It's kind of wild.
I mean, I'm still a Tom Cruise stan, but I mean, he is definitely a way that he portrays characters.
Oh yeah, he definitely has a style.
Yeah.
Signature. Well, cool. So 1988, Rain Man is wrapped up. We'll do 1989, Driving Miss Daisy, one that we've all been looking forward to since we began this series in 1960. The time is here.
Finally.
This time is finally here. So until next time, Chris, where can people find you?
You can find me on the podcast Speculative Speculations. You can find me on pagetune.com.
And Jared.
Yeah, you can find me those places as well as the Fantasy Thinker YouTube channel and weekly polls for panel chewing. It's
Yes.
fun.
That's good stuff. And you can find me on pagetune.com. Join our forums. Come and say hello. Give us recommendations on other movies we should be watching or your thoughts on the Oscar winners we've already covered or some that we haven't covered yet. So until next time, hope everyone has a fantastic day and we'll talk to you very soon.